Hello, this is John Griffiths with the next in the series of films about books. And this series is about books about brands. And I've got quite a lot to show you. Before I do that, though, I wanted to simply make a comment about why read a book about brands. Surely we can simply Google about brands and get what we want off the internet. One of the things I have learned from going through the process of writing a book myself is how much work goes into it, how much editing and thinking, and it makes you realize, even with books that you don't always get on with, how much work goes into each one. And if I've learned anything, it's just to be a little bit more charitable when I'm reading and reviewing books, some of which are great, some of which are not so great, but they represent a distillation of thinking. And if you really want to get to grips with brands, which are complicated, then you're going to need to put in the work to do that. So, having said that, I would suggest you think about books about brands. And I'm going to take you through some broad streams that you might want to think about. I'm going to start with one of the first, and it's a classic. I'll be amazed if you've seen it. It's by someone called Stephen King, who is one of the fathers of account planning. Developing New Brands, written in the 1960s, where he explains the whole process of developing a brand. Get hold of it if you can. It is a classic text. And just then going through this next sequence, there's other books which have come out, either with planners like Don Cowley and Mary Baskin and Mark Earls. These are compilations, people writing about brands. I should also mention Paul Felwick's excellent book, What is Brand Equity Anyway?, which you can see there. And then Byron Sharp, who takes Andrew Ehrenberg's thinking about brands and how brands grow. You can see that up there. And then next to it, What is a 21st Century Brand? Something which the IPA has produced quite recently, and Nick Kendall is the editor of that. Then there's a couple of ones which are a bit anomalies, but I mention them because they're quite important. Mental World of Brands, which was the first book about neuroscience and neuromarketing, which tried to look at how brands are stored in the brain. So that's worth your looking at if you find it. And also, I haven't got Brand Gym, I haven't been able to find it, but in the sequence there's Brand Stretch and Brand Vision. And David Taylor and his consultancy do a lot of work about this. They use the Unilever brand pyramid and various other schematics, and that's worth a look if you work in a more conventional marketing setup. If I then move back to the area of what I would call brand ideas, I've got a little clutch over here. And I would mention, first of all, Steve Hatch and Jim Taylor's book Rigorous Magic, which is about brand ideas and how you develop them, workshop them, and so on. And that might be worth a look. I don't know what's happened by a copy of Brand Innovation Manifesto by John Grant, but one of the brilliant things about this book is that he creates a periodic table of brand ideas, and he's even done a card set called Brand Tarot, which goes with it, which you can get off me if you mail me. And these are really useful workshop tools for thinking about the ideas associated with brands. And I would be neglecting things if I didn't also mention The Pirate Inside, chapter 4, and a wonderful chapter all about brand wrapping, an anthropological model of brands, and all the different things, the language, the behaviors, the rituals, which wrap around brands, which is certainly worth looking at. If I then go into the next strand, this is really about brands getting out of the the conventions of the things that brands say about themselves and taking us more into the areas of branded content. And back to John Grant again with After Image, where he talks about how brands educate their customers. This is quite long in the tooth, but this one, which is called The Experience Economy by Pine and Gilmore, which is about experiential communications and how brands focus on creating experiences, and they're using the metaphor of the theatre being on stage and off stage, and I found that quite useful working on projects to do with sponsorship. On to Dream Society by Rolf Jensen, which is talking about how brands tell stories about the big stories in society. And then on from there to Madison and Vine and The Entertainment Economy. These are, again, books which have been out for quite a while, but they get into the whole issue of branded content and branded entertainment, and are giving you the background for what kinds of things work, but also what's relevant in communicating the brand and what isn't. And I'll finish with corporate religion, which takes it to a level I'm not really very comfortable with, but simply pointing out about how when you do internal culture marketing, you will get better service levels, your employees will ask for less pay rises, they will be more motivated to work longer hours, and so on and so forth. Not particularly enamored of that, but it's just a reminder about how brands work not only externally, but also work inside the organization as well in terms of service delivery. And if I then go up the last strand, what I've got here is 2 books by Wally Ollins. I love this one, Trading Identities, but he does reference the ideas in it in his book on brand. Wally Ollins, the designer, just died I think last year. Trading Identities, why countries and companies are taking on each other's roles. In other words, why companies are behaving more like countries in terms of how they communicate brands, and why countries themselves are now starting to become a lot more organized in terms of the brand personas that they present. And then I move on from that into the ideas around cultural branding. Douglas Holt's book, he's got another one about how brands become icons, and this is really looking at brands being involved in a much wider range of ideas than was the case 10 or 20 years ago. And on to Grant McCracken and his work, The Anthropologist, Culturematic being a really good example of that. But he's also got, being the Chief Culture Officer, there's a whole strand of anthropology which Grant McCracken is now sharing in terms of how you influence culture with your brand. And then this is a personal favourite, Wizard by Stephen Brown, who's a marketing teacher from Northern Ireland, and this is a book about Harry Potter. I really like it because it unpacks the different aspects of what the Harry Potter brand is about in a much more diverse way to help you to understand what content's about. So it's a great piece of storytelling, and I'd recommend that if you can get your hands on it. You can see from this that there are lots and lots of books on brands, and there's almost certainly no time to read them all. So what would I recommend? My goodness. Well, they all come with certain recommendations. It really depends what you're trying to do. But I think the main thing is that you think hard. I mean, if I was to leave you with one single book, I'd either go with the Brand Innovation Manifesto or this is torture. Just because I've used it so much, the Pirate Inside and the Brand Wrapping Example. But just to remind you why we're making these films, and that is because of the 98% pure potato, the book which we're writing about the origins of account planning. Account planning has been absolutely seminal in developing brand thinking, and many of the people who have written these books about brands, if not planners themselves, have been strongly influenced by planning ideas, and therefore for that reason we would encourage you in the last few days to continue to pledge towards the book if you haven't already done so, and we will give you more information as we do it. Thanks for paying attention.